Okay, so I think I know where we left off, but let me double check. Emma, can you tell me what the last thing you have on your notes are? Where did we leave off?
Um, so we just talked about World War One and like the plans, like how they failed, like Belgium, how they wanted to go through Belgium and then they wanted
Yeah.
to attack before Russia. And I think
Okay.
that's it. Oh, and then we talked about like how the warfare changed, like airplane warfare and like trenches and stuff.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Logan Williams.
We also like I think the last part I got was when they like introduced genocide, like of
Yeah.
the Serbians, like the Austrians, the Serbians.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. All right. So we spent a lot of time with not America in the last class, right? All of that stuff. None of what we did in the last class is like on the test, but I think you have to know it in order to understand everything. Like it doesn't make sense to you. You know what I mean? So it's not on the test, but we did it anyway. All right. So now we need to address the things that are on the test. Okay. So we need to go reasons why the United States enters the war. Reasons why the United States enters the war. We're going to start this off, okay? So first, our president is Wilson, and he is reelected on a platform of keeping us out of war. We're going to make a new, yeah, make a new number, okay? And he's elected to keep us out of war, but we're going to get a couple of big events that are happening, okay? So there's three things. There's three big things that we need. Okay, the first I don't have a slide for, but the first is the United States has a lot of economic ties to England and France. And so when the war breaks out, the United States is like making weapons and giving supplies to England, especially England. They're like our best friend, right? But especially England, but also France. Those are our two closest allies. Now, the United States at the beginning wants to have an economic relationship with all the sides because the U.S. is not super anti-Germany at this point in history, right? In fact, the United States, most Americans are of German descent, right? I don't know if you know this or not, but about 80% of white people in the United States are of German descent, right? I'd be willing to bet almost everyone here has German ancestry, has like at least a third of German ancestry, right? Most white Americans are at least a third German, and many white Americans are also like at least a quarter Scottish or Irish, right? That's the majority of white people in America. But there you go. All right. And so because of that, a lot of Americans are not eager to go to war with Germany because a lot of Americans are like, Germany is like my grandpa, right? I don't want to go to war with my grandpa. But business wise, government wise, the United States is firmly linked to England and France. Those are our oldest friends. Those are the friends that we care the most about, England and France. I don't see Anika's trying to join. I don't see her in my waiting room. She's going to have to log in again, Shiva. I don't see her in my waiting room. So
I'll let her know.
Yeah, have her just log out and log back in because everyone who was in the waiting room, I just admitted them in. So I don't see her in there. Okay. Anyway, so that's one. We have these big connections. Okay. Two is the sinking of the Lusitania. This is what we have on the picture here. So the Lusitania is a, oh, there we go. All right. Anika and Allison are, I'm letting Anika in now. Or I'm trying to. Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who's trying to get in? Derek, you're in, right? I can't see. There's too many windows on my screen. Oh, I see you, Derek. Okay. All right. I think that's everybody. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. All right. So, So the Lusitania. The Lusitania is the name of a ship. It's a British ship. It's not an American ship. Okay. But it's a British ship that was leaving from Ireland heading to the United States. and it's a big it's a big ship like the Titanic, right? It's a similar in style to the Titanic, a little bit smaller than the Titanic, and most of the people on the ship were Americans. Okay, so it had on it about 400 Americans, and a German submarine sinks it, and they shoot it and sink it. The Germans had put out a warning saying that anybody who's bringing supplies to and from England is going to get shot at, and Americans had officially been neutral this entire time, but we're not very neutral because we are giving weapons to the British, right? The Germans are pointing out, they're like, that's not how neutrality works, right? So they sink the ship, and the Germans have no idea that the ship is filled with Americans. It's almost completely Americans. It's like 400 Americans and then like 100 non-Americans. Okay, so it's mostly Americans on this ship, and Americans are really pissed about this. This is something that Americans view this as like a betrayal of our neutrality, right? Most Americans believe that we're truly neutral, and they believe that the Germans are just acting in this like sneaky, underhanded way because the Germans used submarines, and a submarine is considered a dishonorable combat, right? Because you're sneaking up and you're killing someone before they even know. And so they're killing a ship that has no weapons, can't fight back, and you're doing it with a dishonorable way of fighting. So that's something that the Americans are really pissed off about. Okay. So reason number one, business ties to England and France. Reason number two, the sinking of the Lusitania. Reason number three is going to be the actual trigger. That's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And it's something that a bunch of you guys referenced in your discussion last week. The Zimmerman telegram. The Zimmerman telegram. So the Zimmerman telegram, Zimmerman is the foreign minister of Germany, right? He's the foreign minister of Germany. That would be like the American equivalent would be like the Secretary of State. And he sends a message to Mexico. It's a message from Germany to Mexico. The British capture the message, they intercept the message, and the British break the code, and they give the code to the United States, and they send the message to the United States. What the Zimmerman telegram was doing, what it was trying to do, was the Zimmerman telegram was trying to get Mexico to join the war. They wanted Mexico to join the war on the side of the Germans, and they wanted Mexico to invade the United States. The Germans are trying to get Mexico involved. And so what the Germans are hoping, they're hoping that Mexico will fight the United States. United States will be so tied up fighting Mexico that the US won't be able to send troops to Europe. That's the German goal. What does Mexico get out of this? Germany says, if you do this, Mexico, we will give you back, we will make sure you get back Texas and California, Arizona, New Mexico. That land will come back to Mexico. All right, so Grace, what do you think Mexico does with this message when they get this?
I don't really know, but since I know that they don't end up invading the United States, I'm assuming that they say no.
Yeah, the Mexicans actually, when they get the message the first time, they actually ignore the message, right? But what ends up happening is the message gets released into the American press, and it starts getting published in American newspapers, and Americans flip their lid. Americans go crazy because Americans are like, how dare you, Mexico? Ah, right? America starts flipping out, right? And America starts treating Mexico like Mexico had betrayed the United States, right? Mexico is very, very, very careful to say, we did not do this. We didn't ask for this. We didn't want this. It's not our message. They sent it to us, right? Mexico's like, don't get mad at the letter they sent us. We didn't want this. Mexico is very, very, very adamant that they do not want to be part of this. They do not want the United States invading them again. Okay. But it's too late. The Americans don't invade Mexico. But this time the Americans are so pissed off and so upset. I'm trying to let Anika in again. I don't know what her connection is bad, I guess. I don't know. She keeps coming back into the waiting room and I keep letting her in. All right. So the Americans are so pissed off about this that Americans declare war on Germany. And we join the war, baby, right? We are in that war, 1917, and we stay in that war. It takes us a while to get going. Okay, so the war starts in 1915. We join in 1917, but we don't actually get troops there until like 1918. It takes us a while to get going, right? We join the war for the last 9 months. Woohoo! Yeah, we joined just long enough to win and take all the credit. America, USA, USA, USA. We joined at the last minute and take all the credit. USA, USA, USA. You guys should feel more patriotic pride about this. It's the best way to win a war, right? Like we didn't hardly die at all. Nicely done, America. All right. And we get all the credit because we single-handedly won the war, as all the American newspapers will tell you. All right, so this isn't part of American history, but this is something that we need. The Bolshevik Revolution happens in Russia. Make this a new letter. The Bolshevik Revolution happens in Russia. Basically what this is, I'll give you just the shortened version. Communists overthrow the government of Russia. Communists overthrow the government of Russia. They kill the Tsar. They kill the Tsar of Russia. They kill the Tsar's family, including young Anastasia, if you've seen the movie, right? They kill Anastasia, and the communists take over the government. The communists are being led by this gentleman right here in the picture. His name is Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin, Lenin, Vladimir Lenin. And he is pretty angry about a lot of things, okay? We're going to be dealing with communism for quite a while. It's not going to go away. So we're going to have to be doing some communism stuff as we get forward here. But communism is the far left government. It's a far left extremist government. And the Bolshevik Revolution, it's otherwise known as the October Revolution because it happens in November of 1917. Yeah. The October Revolution happens in November of 1917. The reason why we call it the October Revolution is because Russians used a different calendar. And so for them, it was October, but for the rest of the world, it was November. So anyway, Russia gets its government overthrown and Russia immediately withdraws from the war. And Russia moves directly into their civil war. This is all part of the same number. Keep this as all part of the same number. What you really need here is that Russia has withdrawn from World War I. Russia has overthrown its government and become communist. And Russia now is entering a 5-year civil war. By the end of this, Russia is going to end up walking away with so many dead people. Oh my God. Russia is going to have another 12 million die in addition to World War I. The Russian Civil War becomes a nightmare. It becomes a nightmare. Armies are traveling around the country, fighting people, and we're going to get just all these nightmare scenarios. The boy in the picture here, the scary looking boy in the picture here, he becomes famous on the Russian newspapers because they take pictures of him. The army takes all the food from the town. He starves to death. He kills his sister and eats her. And then when the army finds him, they execute him for cannibalism, right? That's going to give you an idea of what kind of Russian civil war is going on here. This Russian civil war is really, really nasty. It's a really nasty war. And it's a nasty war that Americans are kind of involved in. We send troops into Russia trying to support the Tsar. It's the first time in American history that we try to defend a king. We fail gloriously. The Tsar gets killed and the Russian Civil War ends and we get the hell out of there. Okay. Spanish flu. I forgot Spanish flu. Is it the worst civil war in the world? No, I think the Chinese Civil War is probably worse. The Chinese Civil War, Paul asked in the chat if it's the worst in the world. The Chinese Civil War lasts for like 19 years. 19 years, and the Chinese Civil War kills something like 50 million people or 60 million people. So the Chinese Civil War is probably the worst, but no civil wars are good. The Russian Civil War is really nasty though. Like it's one of the worst. It's probably top 5 worst civil wars. Yeah. All right. The world is also hit with Spanish flu. Let's go ahead and do this real quick. The world's hit with Spanish flu. Now, this may sound like a really crazy topic to you, but by the time we get to 1918, the world experiences something called a global pandemic, where a disease breaks out across the entire world. And yeah, go ahead and make a new letter. That's fine. This will be a relatively short one. The Spanish flu hits around the world. They call it the Spanish flu because the first big famous person to get sick is the Princess of Spain, and she dies from it. And so people all think it's the Spanish flu. Here's a secret though. Don't tell anyone. The Spanish flu started in Kansas, not Spain. Shh. It's a secret though. Don't tell anyone. Yeah, as far as we can tell, modern day epidemiology and analyzing it is that we think it actually came from Kansas. We're pretty sure it came from Kansas. Kansas had cases about 3 months before Europe did. Whoops. Ugh. And then we carried it over to Europe, and then the Europeans got it. Okay. Spanish flu, otherwise known as H1N1, if you guys maybe heard that recently, H1N1 flu. It's one of the versions of flu that is like super, super dangerous to humans. You guys may know it better as bird flu. Bird flu, it hit Asia a couple years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, and it killed like 3 million people in Hong Kong. Yeah. So anyway, at this time we call it the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu is the second worst pandemic to ever hit the earth. Third worst. Third worst pandemic to ever hit the earth. And by the time the Spanish flu hits, it kills off close to 100 million people. It kills 5% of the planet Earth. 5% of the planet Earth. Okay. To give you an idea here, the worst hit places in the world with coronavirus today, the worst places in the world have lost about 1%. Okay. So coronavirus has killed about 1% of the worst places in the world. Spanish flu kills about 5% of Earth. There's some really, really bad ones like South Pacific. The Spanish flu shows up in Samoa. It shows up in Samoa, and Samoans have never had the flu before. It's not a disease that exists in the flu. In Samoa, it's a cold weather disease, right? And Samoa ends up losing about 80% of its population because the flu hits them, and they have no idea how to handle it. They don't know what to do about it, right? So they're particularly vulnerable. It almost completely wipes out Fiji and Samoa and some other places. It also is made worse by World War I, because World War I has all these people in trenches and all these cities that are blown up and all this stuff, right? And so, of course, disease is worse. The war comes to an end. Let's make a new letter, the end of the war. Look at these. You don't need all these numbers, but I want these numbers to kind of sink in for a moment. These are individual battles. Grace asked the difference between a pandemic and an epidemic. It's the size. It's the size. So an epidemic is something that's happening over a city or a small region, right? So you could have like an epidemic that breaks out across the Wasatch Front, right? A pandemic is something that is either global or across entire continents. It's the size that you're looking at. Okay. Look at these battles here. Look at the death toll on these battles. These are single battles. 1.2 million dead, 1.8 million dead, 1.5 million dead, right? The world has never seen battles like this before. This is the first time the Industrial Revolution has gone to war, and the Industrial Revolution is doing to soldiers what the Industrial Revolution has been doing to factories, right? It's just turning them into this. Here's the end results. This table here. These numbers are the numbers of dead. Okay. Russia also loses a low end estimate is 2 million from its civil war, right? So all of these, if you look at the percentages, these percentages, the numbers may not be that big. Like it may look like 725 dead Serbians, 725,000 dead Serbians is not that much, but it's 16% of Serbia. 16%. France loses 4%. The other thing you need to keep in mind, all of these numbers add 5% for Spanish flu dead, right? So if France in this thing loses 4% of its dead, 4% plus another 5% for the Spanish flu. So France is walking away with almost 10% of its population gone. Okay. The Russians are going to walk away with 8% plus that 5%, plus the Russians are going to kill another 20 million people very shortly. The Russians lose 40 million people in 10 years. 40 million in a country of 120 million. Okay. The world has never seen numbers like this. This is so many dead people. Okay. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that these war numbers here, these war numbers are mostly young men, right? Mostly young men. Spanish flu, of course, kills everybody, right? Spanish flu kills everybody and has a bias towards killing children. But men and women, males and females, boys and girls, men and women, will die evenly in the Spanish flu, right? 50-50, okay? War disproportionately kills men, right? Women just don't die in war because women aren't in the war usually, for the most part. And so France is losing 4% of its population, but keep in mind that that's 4% from just the men. And it's 4% just from the fighting age men. Okay, so about 25% of France is fighting age men, and they lose 4%. Okay, so they lose like 1/5 of all of the men who could become fathers in their country. You have to let that number kind of sink in because this number is really bad. The other part of this number is that about twice as many as the dead are injured. So if France has 4% dead, that means it has 8% injured. Okay, that means France has 12% of its overall population, half of the fighting men, half of fighting age men. So these are men from the ages of 17 to 30. Half of them are gone, right? They're either dead or they're injured, oftentimes to the point where they can't produce children, they can't work, they can't do anything else. And many of them are just going to go ahead and kill themselves because we don't know this yet, but PTSD has sunk in. The world loses 21 million people plus the Spanish flu. Okay. This is where we need to go with the Treaty of Versailles. It's a new letter. The Treaty of Versailles is going to go down in history as maybe the worst treaty of all time. One of the worst treaties. It's signed in the Palace of Versailles in France. And this Treaty of Versailles does a couple of things. First, it ends the war. So it ends World War I. It also results in Germany surrendering, and Germany takes the blame for everything. Now, there's something we need to take just a moment here because there's something about this treaty that I think you need to understand. Now, most of you guys already know that the Treaty of Versailles is going to go down in history as one of the worst treaties because you guys already know that it's going to produce the Nazis, right? The Treaty of Versailles becomes the Nazi Germany, right? And so you already know what's coming. They don't know that. The Treaty of Versailles is a document of revenge. when they sit down to negotiate, France's opening negotiation is the complete and total destruction of the country of Germany, the execution of all men in Germany, and the forced mating of all the women of Germany to erase the German culture from the planet Earth. They want to take all the women out of Germany and pair them up with men from other countries to produce other babies. They want to remove Germany from the earth. That's their opening negotiation, right? And when France says that's what we want to start with, is the absolute total 100% destruction of Germany, right? Belgium says, okay. England says, okay. Italy says, okay, right? It's starting to look like that, at which point Germany says, not okay. We're going to keep fighting. This is where Woodrow Wilson gets his strength, okay? Woodrow Wilson, we've dissed on him quite a bit because he's kind of a trash bag of a person, right? But he's very, very good at negotiating the peace. Woodrow Wilson talks them down from genocide to what we get. Woodrow Wilson calms everyone down. He's the calming influence on the Treaty of Versailles. Wilson is the voice, the only voice there saying, whoa, hold on. We can't just destroy Germany from existence. Okay. This is why Wilson oftentimes is regarded as like one of our great presidents. Okay. Oftentimes, old people especially will regard Wilson as one of our greatest presidents because of how he negotiates this peace. He is a garbage human in a lot of ways, right? Racist, sexist. He's a complete nightmare of a human being in many ways, but he's very, very good at negotiating peace. So we need to recognize what he's good at, and he's good at this. Okay, so Germany takes, here's the things in the treaty. Germany takes 100% responsibility. This means Germany has to pay back all damages. What the result is that Germany's having to pay 450% of its annual budget every year. 450% of its annual budget. Okay, now I'm not a math major, but it seems to me like paying 450% of your budget might be difficult. It might be a really difficult thing to pay, you know? The other thing is Germany loses about 25% of its land. It loses about 25% of its land, including its best farmland. It loses its best farmland, okay? The Austrian Empire is gone. They break it up. The Ottoman Empire, gone. They break it up. And Germany is not allowed to ever have a military ever again. According to the Treaty of Versailles, Germany will never have an army, an air force, or a navy ever again. And if Germany ever attempts to have a military, then all of the allied countries are expected to immediately invade Germany and stop them. Okay? So you guys see some problems with this treaty right away? Right? Alicia, right off the bat, what's the biggest problem you see with the treaty? Alicia and then Alicia.
Well, it seems like it would make Germany really upset.
Yeah,
Like not
we know.
having land and not being able to raise an army and having to pay so much money back. So it
Okay.
doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, Germany is going to get pretty upset. They're going to elect a man named Hitler, you know, pretty soon. So Hitler's kind of like the most upset you get. All right, Alicia and then Ryder.
Germany's left with nothing or very little.
Right, so they lost their land. Okay, what else? Give me some specific problems, some specific issues that are coming up. Ryder and then Logan Williams.
Doesn't Germany like get their military back anyways? And they're just gonna say like, what are you gonna do about it? Pretty much.
Yeah, when they start making their military, what according to the treaty, what's supposed to happen? If they get a military, what's supposed to happen? Ryder, what's supposed to happen if they get a military?
I'll help them out. All the countries supposed to go to war against them, right?
Yeah, France, England, and the United States are supposed to go to war with them. The problem is when Germany gets an army, France, England, and the United States are all like, oh, hell no, I don't want to go to war, right? They're all scared of going to war, and so they don't do it. And so Germany just keeps going. Yeah, it's a real problem. Logan, did you have another specific problem?
It leaves Germany unable like to pay their debts because they're in such like inflation and all that. They're not able to pay anything back, so they end up just not paying anything in the end.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So the result here from the Treaty of Versailles, let's put some results here really quick. The result is Germany is completely 100% totally bankrupt. They experience something called hyperinflation. Totally bankrupt. They experience hyperinflation. Okay. They also experience what Alicia was leading us to, anger and resentment, which is going to cause them to create an army, which is going to cause them to attack their neighbors. Okay. All right. There's one more topic that we have to deal with, and this is Woodrow Wilson's baby. This is the thing he cares the most about. Oh, here's how the borders changed. Here was Germany. There is Germany. There was Austria-Hungary. It became this, right? All these countries got changed. So let's deal with the League of Nations. All right. So the League of Nations, make this a new number. This is Woodrow Wilson's baby. He comes up with an organization called the League of Nations. And the League of Nations is supposed to be a unified place where all of the countries of the world can get together and negotiate with each other. A unified place where all of the countries of the world can get together and negotiate with each other. The goal of the League of Nations is to avoid war. The goal of the League of Nations is to avoid war and negotiate with each other. And Paul, you're already asking about the UN. This is going to become the inspiration for the UN, right? Because the League of Nations, I'm going to let you know now, fails. All right, so let's put in your notes, the League of Nations fails. And let's,
Germany wasn't invited.
yeah, let's take a look at the map here. Let's take a look at a map and notice some glaring problems here, right? So Logan has already identified what I think is problem number 3. So let's put problems number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, problems number 3 is that Germany was not invited. They didn't let Germany in. Germany tried to join the league and the whole world said, nah, screw you, Germany. You can't join. You're not part of the cool kids club. All right, Fatima, what looking at the map, what is your instinct? What's the other big problem? Oh,
Wait, so are the gray?
Yeah, let me help you out. The dark blue areas are areas that join right away. The light blue areas are areas that join because they're controlled by another country. The orange areas are areas that like half membership. They have like half membership because, well, their membership gets held up for other reasons, right? The gray areas never join. All right, so Fatima, what do you think is the number 1 and number 2 problems?
United States and Russia, they didn't join.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put problem number 2 is the Soviet Union doesn't join. It's not Russia anymore. Russia's gone. Now it's the USSR. USSR or Soviet Union. You can call it either of those, USSR or Soviet Union. USSR stands for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Okay, otherwise known as the Soviet Union. Let's put that as number 2. Okay, and the number 1 problem is, as Fatima points out, the United States doesn't join. Okay, which is ironic because, of course, the United States is the country that gets all the other countries to join. We get France to join, we get Italy to join, we get England to join. We go to all these countries and we get them to join. We get like Brazil to join and Argentina to join, right? And Argentina's like, what the hell? We're not even part of this, right? And we get like New Zealand to join. New Zealand is like, man, we're down in the corner of the world. Nobody cares about us, right? But we go and we get all these countries to join and we don't. Okay, so why do you think? All right, so the League of Nations is going to fail because A, Germany and the Soviet Union and the United States, those 3 countries don't join, right? And those 3 countries, the United States and the Soviet Union being 2 of the most powerful countries on the planet, two of the largest, richest, most powerful countries on the planet, and Germany being the country that started the war, right? Like that's three major problems with this. Okay. So it is going to fail, but it becomes an inspiration for the UN later. Why do you think it fails? Kennedy, why do you think it fails?
Is it because it just kind of like the whole thing's just undermined without the support of the people who kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry. I asked you the wrong question. Kennedy, why doesn't the US join?
Oh.
That's the question I meant to ask. I'm sorry. It fails because those countries don't join. Why doesn't the US join? The question Paul just asked in the chat also. What do you think?
I'm assuming it was like contradictory in Congress or something like that. Like it wasn't a popular opinion.
Okay. The League of Nations, I'm going to let you know now, the League of Nations was popular with the American people. The American people wanted it. Okay. Who else? Liliana, why do you think? Why does it fail? Or why does the US fail to join? Anika, you're next. Anika, help her out. Luke, you're on deck. Anika going once. Anika going twice. Anika logged in and is not part of class. All right, Luke, help us out. Why do you think the US didn't join?
I think it's maybe because they didn't want to be involved in all the drama with other countries and just wanted to stay out of it.
Okay. Yeah, the US is worried about this, right? I'm gonna let you know now, the Senate kills it. The US Senate kills it, and the US Senate kills it because for two reasons. Yeah, Logan, what do you think?
Isn't it partially because they don't want to get dragged in like allies again? Like
Yeah,
they
so
saw
that's
the
where
conflict in Europe.
exactly that's where Luke was going with it, right? So part of it, the US Senate says that we don't want to sacrifice our independence. We don't want to get dragged into other people's wars. That's what the Senate says. But I'm gonna let you know that there's something else that happens too. Right as this is happening, where Woodrow Wilson is trying to travel the country and try to promote it and trying to get people to support it, Woodrow Wilson has a stroke. He has a stroke and almost dies. He has a stroke and he almost dies. And when he does that, where is it? When he has his stroke, he loses the ability to. He has a stroke in October of 1919. And when he has a stroke, he loses his ability to speak, he loses his ability to walk, he loses his ability to control his body. Okay. So Wilson is out of commission. And this actually becomes, if we had more time, I would do this in person, but we would read an article on this. It actually becomes really kind of controversial because his wife, Edith Wilson, runs the government for a year. Right? So Edith Wilson, his wife in the picture here, she basically Woodrow lays in the bed all day long and she stands at the door and blocks people from coming in, and she's the one who allows some documents in and he signs them and then she hands them back out. She's basically running a shadow government for like a year. And the press doesn't know that he's sick. They don't know what happened to him. They think he just had pneumonia and then recovered and he's just been in the White House. But he stays in the White House for like a year in bed, not being able to speak, not being able to move, with his wife running everything. Okay. This becomes like top secret, state secret, is absolutely forbidden to be talked about. They can't talk about it in the news. In fact, she doesn't even tell Congress. Congress doesn't even know about it. There's only like 3 people in Congress that know about it. And there's like 3 people in Congress, his Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, his Vice President, and his Chief of Staff. And that's it. and then like his doctors. And those are the only people who know. And she runs a shadow government. Okay. There is a lot of argument that it is 100% absolutely totally illegal for her to do that. She was not supposed to be doing that. She was not supposed to be doing that at all. It's totally illegal. Nobody elected her. She's nothing. She's his wife. She doesn't have a position. She doesn't have a job. She's just taking care of her husband. She makes the argument that she's just doing what any good wife would do. Right? But she is like signing documents. She's signing like treaties. She's like passing on laws. They're like signing laws into effect through Woodrow Wilson, where he can barely even move or type, or he can't type, but he can barely even like hold he can barely like even hold a pencil in his hands, right? So the League of Nations fails for two reasons. One, the Senate doesn't want to give up American independence. Two, Wilson has a stroke, and so he can't promote it anymore. And Edith doesn't promote it. She just stays and takes care of her husband. And thus ends a strange, isn't this why the 25th Amendment is made? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, Derek is mentioning the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment allows you to remove somebody from office if they are sick, remove the president from office if they're sick. And when they make the 25th Amendment, they have Woodrow Wilson in mind, but they also are mentioning, by the time they make the 25th Amendment, they're also scared of like nuclear war and stuff. And so they're thinking like, what if somebody nukes Washington, D.C. and kills like the, top 10 people in the government, right? So it's a combination of two things they're worried about: Woodrow Wilson's stroke and nuking DC. So, all right, we're good. I think we're done here. We're done with Wilson. He fades away into history, and it becomes public knowledge of his stroke about 10 years after he's dead. So the country doesn't learn about it until like 1930. Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? All right. Do you guys have any questions or comments or problems or anything? Okay. This is the only time I'm going to see you all week. I would have just canceled class for snow day, but because I'm only seeing you one day and we're already behind, like I was too worried. We had to do this. So make sure you do the discussion. Make sure you do the discussion. It's based on your textbook, right? I think it's a pretty fun one. So log in and make sure you get that done, okay? Cool. All right. If you have any questions, you can stay on. Otherwise, you're all free to go.